The Great Hall of the Galactic Council was the largest building in the known universe. It floated in the empty space between three star systems, a massive structure made of crystal and metal that had stood for 10,000 years. Inside, representatives from over 2,000 species sat in their seats, arranged in a circle that stretched for miles. Lights of every color filled the air as different beings communicated in their own ways. Ambassador Park walked to the center of the hall. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had served humanity for 30 years in this place. He had smiled when they insulted Earth. He had stayed quiet when they laughed at human ideas. He had watched as other species took credit for human inventions. But today was different. Today, he carried a message that would change everything. The Supreme Council leader, a massive creature with 6 arms and skin like blue stone, looked down at the human with amusement. His name was, and he had led the council for 500 years. To him, humans were children. They had only joined the galactic community 100 years ago. They were weak, small, and lived such short lives. "The representative from Earth may speak," said, his voice booming through the translation devices that every being wore. These small machines allowed all species to understand each other. They were, like many things in this hall, invented by humans. Cleared his throat. He looked around at the thousands of faces watching him. Some were curious, most were bored, a few were already laughing quietly among themselves. The humans always asked for things, more respect, better trade deals, fair treatment, and the council always said no. "Thank you, Supreme Leader," said. His voice was calm and steady. "I come before this council today not to ask for anything. I come to make an announcement." This was unusual. The laughter stopped, even leaned forward slightly. "Earth and all human colonies," continued, "effective immediately, are withdrawing from the Galactic Council. We are severing all ties with this organization and its member species." For a moment there was complete silence. Then the laughter began. It started small, from the delegates sitting closest to the center. Then it spread like a wave across the entire hall. Thousands of beings laughed at the tiny human standing alone in the middle. Himself smiled, showing rows of sharp teeth. "Ambassador, please be serious. Earth cannot survive without the Council. You need our protection, you need our technology, you need our trade." Did not smile. He did not react to the laughter at all. Instead, he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small device. It was simple, just a black box with a single red button. He pressed it. Every translation device in the hall went silent. The laughter died instantly. Suddenly, no one could understand anyone else. The hall filled with confused sounds as thousands of species tried to communicate and failed. Panic began to spread. Delegates stood up from their seats. Some tried to fix their devices. Others looked around in fear. Roared something in his native language, but no one could understand him. His blue face turned purple with anger. He slammed his 6 fists on his podium, but it did nothing. Pulled out his own translation device, a different model than the others. He spoke, and his words came through clear in every language. "These translation devices," he said, "were invented by humans. We gave them to the Council for free. We asked for nothing in return. We only wanted to help." He began to walk slowly around the center of the hall. "The food processing systems that feed half the species in this room, human design. The medical scanners that saved billions of lives last year, human invention. The navigation computers that guide your ships through hyperspace, we created those too." He stopped and looked up at, who was still struggling with his useless device. "For 100 years we gave and gave. We shared our ideas freely. We asked only for respect and fair treatment. And what did we receive? Mockery, exploitation. Our inventions stolen and credited to others. Our people treated as lesser beings." A young human woman appeared on a holographic screen behind. Her name was, and she was the chief engineer of Earth's Space Command. She was small with short black hair and eyes that burned with determination. "This is a demonstration," said through the screen. "Right now, human engineers across the galaxy are shutting down systems, not destroying them, just turning them off. We want you to understand what your galaxy looks like without us." Across the Great Hall, lights began to flicker. The artificial gravity became unstable for a moment, making delegates float slightly from their seats before settling back down. Life support systems beeped warnings before human engineers turned them back on. "We could destroy everything," said. "We could leave you all floating in the dark, unable to breathe, unable to communicate. But we are not cruel, we are not like you." He walked back to the center and looked directly at. "We are leaving. We are taking our engineers, our scientists, our doctors, and our teachers. We are taking our technology and our knowledge, and we are going home." Finally managed to make his voice heard through a backup system. "You cannot do this. The treaties, the laws." "The treaties that say human inventions belong to the Council?" asked. "The laws that let you tax our colonies at 3 times the rate of others, those treaties and laws." He shook his head. "We wrote better laws, we made fairer treaties. You rejected them every time. So now we are done asking for your permission." He pressed another button on his device. The translation machines came back on, but now they spoke only in human languages, forcing every species to learn quickly or remain confused. "From this moment," said, "Earth stands alone. Any species that wishes to work with us fairly may contact us directly, but the Galactic Council, we are finished with you." He turned and walked toward the exit. The hall erupted into chaos behind him. Delegates shouted and argued. Some tried to stop him, but human security officers appeared from the shadows, armed with weapons that the Council had never seen before. As reached the doors, he stopped and looked back one final time. "You laughed at us," he said quietly, but his words carried through the entire hall. "You called us weak and primitive. You forgot one important thing about humans." He smiled, and for the first time, the Council saw something dangerous in human eyes. "We are survivors. We crawled out of mud and reached for the stars. We built everything from nothing, and we do not need you, but very soon you will discover just how much you need us." The doors closed behind him. The great hall of the Galactic Council fell into panic, and across the cosmos the word began to spread. The humans were leaving, and no one knew what would happen next. 2 weeks had passed since Ambassador made his announcement. Commander stood at the observation window of Earth's largest orbital station, watching the chaos unfold across the stars. Behind her, dozens of screens showed news feeds from hundreds of different worlds. Every single one told the same story. The galaxy was falling apart. Was only 35 years old, but she had already seen more than most humans ever would. She had helped build the station she now commanded. She had trained engineers who went to work on alien worlds. She had watched humanity give away its greatest achievements for nothing in return. And now, she watched those same achievements crumble without human hands to maintain them. Her second-in-command, Lieutenant Minu, walked up beside her. He was a young man with a kind face and worried eyes. In his hands, he held a tablet filled with emergency reports. "Another 3 systems went dark this morning," Minu said quietly. "The food processing plants on 7 failed completely. They are saying millions will starve within the month." Closed her eyes for a moment. She did not enjoy watching others suffer, but she also remembered the council meetings where those same had voted against giving humans basic rights. She remembered how they had laughed when human children died in a mining accident because the council refused to send medical supplies. "Did we offer to help?" she asked. "We did. They refused. Their government said they would rather die than accept human assistance." "Then that is their choice." She turned away from the window and walked toward the command center. The station was busy with activity. Human workers moved in every direction, carrying equipment and checking systems. These were the engineers and scientists who had once kept the galaxy running. Now they were home, using their skills to improve their own worlds. Dr. Lee met them at the entrance to the command center. She was the station's chief medical officer, a woman with silver-streaked hair and gentle hands that had healed thousands of patients. She looked exhausted. 3 more hospital ships arrived this morning, said. Alien patients. Their own doctors do not know how to use the medical equipment they bought from us. Turn them away, Minyu suggested. They made their choice. But shook her head. No, we are not like them. Heal whoever needs healing, but make sure they understand who is helping them, and make sure their governments receive the bill. Nodded and hurried away. The command center was a massive room filled with holographic displays and communication equipment. From here, could see everything happening across human space. 12 colony worlds, hundreds of space stations, millions of ships, all of them working together for the first time in a century. Without the Council's unfair taxes, human colonies were thriving. Without the need to send their best engineers away, human technology was advancing faster than ever. In just 2 weeks, they had made improvements that would have taken years under Council rule. An alert sounded from one of the displays. A young officer named looked up from her station with wide eyes. Commander, we have incoming ships, over 200 of them. They are heading directly for Earth. The room went quiet, walked to the main display and studied the approaching fleet. The ships were from the Empire, one of the Council's strongest military powers. They had been humanity's most vocal critics, always demanding that humans be kicked out of the Council entirely. Open a channel, ordered. The screen flickered and the face of it appeared. He was a tall creature covered in gray scales, with 4 eyes that burned with anger. General had led the military for over 300 years. He had conquered dozens of worlds. He had never lost a battle. Humans growled. You will surrender immediately. You will return to the Council. You will restore all systems you have disabled, or we will destroy your pathetic planet. Smiled politely. General, thank you for visiting. Unfortunately, we are not accepting threats today. Please turn your ships around and go home. The general's scales turned dark red with rage. You dare mock me? Do you know how many species I have crushed beneath my feet? You are nothing. You are insects. We are insects who built your navigation systems, replied calmly. The same systems that brought your fleet here safely. Would you like to see what happens when those systems stop working? She nodded too, who pressed a sequence of buttons. On the screen's expression changed from anger to confusion, then to fear. Behind him, his officers began shouting in panic. Warning lights flashed across his bridge. What did you do? He demanded. Nothing permanent, said. Just a small demonstration. Right now, your entire fleet is spinning in circles. Your weapons are offline. Your shields are down. Your engines will only fire in reverse. And your life support is... Well, let us just say you have about 10 minutes of air left. The general's 4 eyes went wide with terror. His scales turned pale gray. You can try to fix these problems yourself, continued. But the computers running your ships are very complicated. It took human engineers 5 years to design them. Do you think your technicians can figure them out in 10 minutes? This is an act of war, screamed. No, General, war is what you threatened us with. This is self-defense. This is showing you exactly how much you need us. Leaned forward slightly. Now I will make you an offer. Take your fleet and leave. Never threaten Earth again. Do this and I will restore your systems. Refuse and... She shrugged. Your life support only has 8 minutes now. I suggest you decide quickly. For a long moment, stared at her with pure hatred in his 4 eyes. Then slowly, his shoulders slumped. His scales returned to their normal gray color. Restore the systems, he said quietly. We will leave. Nodded to again. Within seconds, the ship stabilized. They turned and began moving away from Earth at full speed. The command center erupted in cheers. Officers hugged each other. Some laughed. Some cried. They had just faced down one of the galaxy's greatest military powers and won without firing a single shot. Minyu walked up to with amazement on his face. "I cannot believe that worked." "It worked because they never thought about what would happen if we said no," replied. "They took everything from us for 100 years. They never imagined we would take it back." She looked out through the observation windows at the retreating fleet. "This is just the beginning. Word will spread. Everyone will learn what happened here today, and soon they will all understand the truth." "What truth?" Minyu asked. Turned to face her crew. These were the men and women who had built the galaxy's greatest wonders. These were the engineers and scientists who had been mocked and dismissed for a century. Now, they were finally free. "The truth that the galaxy never ruled over humanity," she said. "We just let them believe they did. We were always the ones holding everything together. And now that we have stopped, they will realize just how much they need us." She smiled, and there was iron in her eyes. "The collapse has just begun. By the time it is over, they will beg us to return, and this time we will set the terms." Across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. The empire, feared by thousands of species, had been humiliated by the humans, the insects, the weaklings, the joke of the galaxy. And in the great halls of power, on 1,000 different worlds, leaders began to understand something that filled them with dread. The humans had never been weak, they had simply been patient. 1 month had passed since Earth left the Galactic Council. The galaxy had changed more in those 30 days than it had in the previous 1,000 years. Everything was falling apart, and everyone knew exactly who to blame. Counselor Moon Bora sat in her office on the human colony world of New Sol. She was a woman of 50 years with sharp eyes and a sharper mind. Before the separation, she had been a minor trade representative, ignored by both humans and aliens alike. Now, she was one of the most powerful people in the galaxy, because now everyone wanted to talk to humans. Her assistant, a young man named, walked in with a tablet full of messages. He looked tired. He always looked tired these days. There were too many requests and not enough hours in the day. Today's schedule said, Ambassador from the Collective at 8, Representative from the Trade Federation at 9, the Prime Minister of the Empire at 10. The Bora raised an eyebrow after what happened with their fleet. They say they want to apologize. Bora laughed quietly. 1 month ago they had threatened to destroy Earth. Now their Prime Minister was coming to say sorry. How quickly things changed. "Who else?" she asked. "After lunch, you have meetings with 17 different species. All of them are requesting immediate restoration of human services to their worlds." Paused. "And 3 of them are offering marriage proposals." Marriage proposals. To any human willing to accept. They think it might help them get better trade deals. Bora shook her head in amazement. "Tell them we appreciate the offers, but humans prefer to marry for love, not trade advantages." She stood up and walked to her window. Outside, the city of New Sol stretched toward the horizon. Towers of glass and steel rose into the purple sky. Ships flew between buildings, carrying goods and people. It was beautiful and busy, a symbol of what humanity could build when left alone. But beyond the city, holographic screens showed news from across the galaxy. And that news was not beautiful at all. On the planet, millions of beings were starving. Their food production systems had been designed and maintained by human engineers. When those engineers left, the systems failed within 2 weeks. Now they were eating their emergency supplies and praying for help. On the station of Prime, a disease was spreading. Human doctors had developed a cure for it decades ago, but the cure required human medical technology to produce, and they did not know how to make it work. Thousands were dying every day. On 100 other worlds, 100 other disasters were happening. Ships crashed because their navigation failed. Power plants exploded because no one knew how to repair them. Communication networks went silent because the satellites stopped working. The galaxy was learning a painful lesson. They had used human technology for 100 years. They had taken it for granted. They had never bothered to learn how it actually worked. And now, without humans to maintain everything, their civilization was crumbling. The first meeting of the day began exactly at 8. Ambassador of the collective was a small creature with bright orange fur and trembling hands. His species was known for being proud and stubborn. Today, he looked like he had not slept in weeks. "Counselor Moon," said, his voice shaking, "please, you must help us. Our water purification systems have failed completely. Without clean water, our entire population will die within the month." Bora listened patiently. She had heard similar stories many times in the past few weeks. She felt sympathy for the innocent people suffering on these worlds, but she also remembered how they had treated humans. "Ambassador," she said gently, "I seem to remember a council vote 15 years ago, a vote about whether human colonists should be allowed to access water resources on the planet 7. The ambassador's fur turned pale. That was a different time. "You voted no," Bora continued. "You said humans were parasites who would drain the galaxy dry. You laughed when our colonists were forced to leave. 27 humans died during that evacuation because we could not get enough water for the journey. We did not. And now you come to us, asking for help with your water." Fell to his knees. His entire body was shaking. "Please," he whispered, "I was wrong. We were all wrong. We did not understand what you had given us. We did not appreciate it. But please do not let my people die for my mistakes." Bora was silent for a long moment. She thought about those 27 humans who had died. She thought about their families. She thought about the grief and anger that had never fully healed. Then she thought about the millions of innocent who had done nothing wrong, who had never voted against anyone, who were just trying to live their lives. "We will help you," she said finally. Looked up with desperate hope in his eyes. "But there will be conditions," Bora continued. "Human engineers will come to your world. They will fix your water systems. They will also teach your people how to maintain them properly. In exchange, you will pay fair wages for their work. You will treat them with respect and dignity. And you will publicly apologize for what your government said about humanity." "Yes," cried. "Yes to everything, thank you, thank you." He bowed so low that his head touched the floor. When he left the office, he was weeping with relief. Looked at Bora with surprise. "I thought you would be harder on him." "He is not our enemy," Bora replied. "He is a fool who made foolish choices. There is a difference. Our goal is not revenge. Our goal is to show the galaxy what fair treatment looks like. When we help them properly. We do not take advantage. We do not exploit. We are better than that." The rest of the day followed the same pattern. Representatives came, begged for help, and received it with conditions. Every species that asked for assistance had to agree to fair trade deals. They had to recognize human patents and inventions. They had to promise to treat humans as equals, not as lesser beings. Some accepted immediately, others argued and complained, but in the end they all accepted. They had no choice. Without humans, their worlds would die. By evening, Bora had signed agreements with 47 different species. Each agreement was fair. Each one treated both sides with respect. It was the kind of diplomacy that humanity had always wanted, but had never been able to achieve under council rule. Brought her a cup of tea as the sun set over New Sol. "The Supreme Council leader is requesting a meeting," he said. "Himself. He wants to discuss terms for Earth's return." Bora sipped her tea slowly. "Tell him I will think about it. The message says it is urgent." "Everything is urgent now," she smiled slightly. "Let him wait. He made us wait for 100 years. A few more days will not hurt." She looked out at her city, her world, her people. For the first time in a century, humans were free. They were respected. They were valued for what they truly were, not insects, not weaklings, not children, but the builders of civilizations. The begging had begun, and Bora knew it was only going to continue until the entire galaxy understood one simple truth. Humanity was not the galaxy's servant. Humanity was its backbone, and now the galaxy would have to earn the right to stand with them. 2 months after Earth left the Galactic Council, the Great Hall fell silent as Admiral walked to the center. He was a broad-shouldered man with gray temples and eyes that had seen too many battles. Behind him stood a delegation of 50 humans, each one representing a different aspect of human civilization: scientists, engineers, doctors, artists, philosophers, and warriors. The hall looked different from the last time a human had stood here. Half the lights were dim because no one knew how to replace them. Many seats were empty because the representatives could not travel. Their ships did not work without human navigation systems. The translation devices functioned poorly, glitching and cutting out at random moments. Supreme Council Leader sat on his elevated platform, but he no longer looked powerful. His blue skin had turned pale. His 6 arms hung limp at his sides. In 2 months, he had aged visibly. The stress of watching his beloved council crumble had taken a terrible toll. Admiral said, his voice tired and weak, "Thank you for coming." Nodded once. He did not smile, he did not bow, he simply stood there waiting. "We have called this emergency session," continued, "to discuss the return of humanity to the Galactic Council. We are prepared to make certain concessions." A murmur ran through the hall. Concessions. The word seemed to hurt physically to say. "With respect," Supreme Leader replied, "we are not here to discuss our return. We are here to present our terms. You may accept them or reject them, but there will be no negotiation." The murmur grew louder. Several delegates shouted in protest. This was not how things worked. The council negotiated. The council debated. The council did not simply accept demands. Raised one of his 6 hands for silence. "Please, Admiral, share your terms." Pulled out a small device and activated it. A holographic document appeared in the air, large enough for everyone in the hall to read. It was written in every language known to the council, a task that would have been impossible without human translation technology. "First," said, "all human inventions will be recognized as human property. Any species using human technology will pay fair licensing fees. These fees will be used to fund human research, education, and development." Protests erupted from several sections of the hall. For 100 years, council members had used human technology for free. The idea of paying for it was outrageous to many of them. Waited for the noise to die down before continuing. "Second, human colonies will be taxed at the same rate as all other member species. Not higher, not lower, equal." This term received fewer protests. Even the most stubborn delegates knew that the old tax system had been unfair. "Third, humans will receive full voting rights on the council. 1 vote per colony world, just like every other species. Our votes will count the same as everyone else's." More murmurs. Under the old system, all human colonies combined had received only a single vote. This new arrangement would give humanity significant power in council decisions. Fourth, any species that wishes to use human technology must accept human inspectors. These inspectors will ensure that our inventions are being used properly and safely. They will also ensure that human engineers working on foreign worlds are treated with dignity and respect. A delegate from the Empire stood up angrily. "This is insulting. You would have your people spy on us." Turned to face the 3 weeks ago, a human engineer named Han was beaten to death on a mining station. Her crime? She asked for a break to eat lunch. Your overseers called her lazy and made an example of her. The delegate went silent. "Was 28 years old," continued quietly. She had 2 children back home. She took that job because the council's taxes had bankrupted her family. She died alone, far from everyone she loved, because your people saw her as less than human. He looked around the hall at every face watching him. We have many stories likes, too many. This term is not about spying. It is about making sure that what happened to her never happens again. No one protested after that. Fifth, said, the council will issue a formal apology to humanity. This apology will acknowledge the mistreatment we suffered for 100 years. It will be broadcast to every world in council space, and it will be taught in schools so that future generations remember what happened. His face twisted with pain. An apology, a public admission of guilt. It would be the most humiliating moment in council history. But what choice did he have? Is there more? Asked Weekly. One final term, said, perhaps the most important. He paused and looked directly at the Supreme Leader. Humanity will return to the Council. We will share our technology again. We will help rebuild what has been broken, but we will not return as members. Confusion spread through the hall. Not as members, then what? We will return as partners, explained. The Council will no longer govern humanity. We will govern ourselves. We will work with you as equals, not as subjects. Our relationship will be based on mutual respect and mutual benefit. If at any time we feel that this respect has been broken, we reserve the right to leave again. The hall fell into shocked silence. What was describing was unprecedented. No species had ever held such a position. No species had ever demanded such freedom. This is madness, someone shouted from the back of the hall. You cannot expect us to agree to this. Then do not agree, replied calmly. Reject our terms. Watch your worlds continue to crumble. Watch your people starve and suffer and die. We did not cause this crisis. You did. We are offering to help you survive it, but only on our terms. He turned back to, you have 1 day to decide. If we do not receive your answer by tomorrow, we will leave this place and never return. Whatever happens to the galaxy after that will not be our concern. Without waiting for a response, turned and walked toward the exit. His delegation followed in perfect formation. Their footsteps echoed through the silent hall. Watch them go with despair in his ancient eyes. Around him, delegates argued and shouted and wept. Some demanded war. Others begged for peace. Some suggested finding alternatives to human technology. Others laughed bitterly at that idea. There were no alternatives. For hours the debate raged. Voices grew hoarse. Tempers flared. Old enemies became temporary allies as everyone tried to understand what to do. But in the end, there was only one possible answer. As the sun rose over the Council's home system, stood before a communication screen. On the other side, Admiral waited in silence. We accept your terms, said. Each word seemed to cost him a piece of his soul. All of them. Humanity will be recognized as an equal partner. Your inventions will be protected. Your people will be respected. And he closed his eyes in shame. And we apologize for everything. Not at once. We will send our people to begin repairs immediately. The agreement will be signed in 3 days. He ended the call without another word. In his command center, surrounded by his fellow humans, allowed himself a small smile. They had done it. They had changed the galaxy. Not through violence, not through hatred, but through strength and patience and an unshakable belief that they deserved better. The terms had been presented. The terms had been accepted. And now it was time to build a new future. 1 year had passed since Earth severed ties with the Galactic Council. The universe looked very different now. On the anniversary of that historic day, Director Shin stood in the Great Hall where it had all begun. But the hall itself had been transformed completely. Gone were the dim lights and broken systems. Human engineers had rebuilt everything from the ground up. The crystal walls now shone with perfect clarity. The seats were comfortable and arranged fairly, with no species elevated above others. And in the center, where Ambassador had once stood alone and defiant, there was now a round table where representatives from every civilization sat as equals. Was a woman in her 60s with silver hair and warm eyes that held both wisdom and strength. She had spent 40 years fighting for human rights in the galaxy. She had been laughed at, threatened, and dismissed more times than she could count. Now she stood as the first director of the Human Partnership Authority, the organization that managed humanity's relationships with the rest of the cosmos. Beside her stood the people who had made this moment possible. Ambassador Park, now retired but still as sharp as ever. Commander who had defended Earth against the fleet. Counselor Moon Bora who had negotiated the new agreements. Admiral who had delivered the terms. And hundreds of others, engineers, scientists, doctors, teachers, the ordinary humans who had done extraordinary things. Supreme Council leader approached the table slowly. He moved differently now. The arrogance was gone from his posture. A year of watching humans rebuild his crumbling galaxy had taught him something his 500 years of leadership never had: humility. Director Shin said, bowing his massive head, "On behalf of the Galactic Council, I welcome humanity as our equal partner, and I thank you for everything your people have done." Smiled gently. "Thank you, Supreme Leader, but we did not do this for gratitude. We did it because it was right." She turned to address the entire hall. Thousands of beings watched her, some with hope, some with lingering resentment, some with genuine respect. It would take time for old wounds to fully heal, but healing had begun. "1 year ago," said, "humanity made a choice. We chose to stand up for ourselves. We chose to demand the respect we had always deserved. Some called us arrogant, some called us reckless. Some even called us monsters for withdrawing the help that so many depended on." She paused, letting her words settle over the crowd. "But we are not monsters. We never were. We are builders. We are dreamers. We are problem solvers who came from a small blue planet and reached for the stars. And yes, we are survivors who refuse to be treated as anything less than what we are." A holographic display appeared above the table, showing images from across the galaxy. Ships flying safely through hyperspace. Hospitals treating patients with human medical technology. Farms producing food for billions of beings. Schools where human and alien children learn together. "Look at what we have accomplished in just 1 year," continued. "Not through force, not through threats, but through cooperation and mutual respect. The old council treated relationships as competition. One species winning meant another losing. But humans understand something different. When we work together, when we treat each other fairly, everyone wins." She gestured to a young sitting near the front of the hall. He was just a child, barely old enough to understand the historical significance of this moment. "That young's name is, 6 months ago, he was dying from a disease that doctors could not cure. Human medical teams saved his life. They asked for nothing in return except permission to teach doctors how to perform the treatment themselves." His mother, sitting beside him, had tears in her eyes. She nodded with profound gratitude. "We'll grow up in a galaxy where humans and work together," said, "where the hatred and suspicion of the past are just stories in history books. That is what we are building here today. Not an empire, not a system of control, a partnership." She picked up a document from the table, the revised charter of the Galactic Partnership, as it was now called. The old council was gone. In its place was something new, something better, something that gave every species an equal voice. "This charter represents the hopes and dreams of 2,000 civilizations," said. "It was written not by one species imposing its will on others, but by all of us working together. It protects the rights of the strong and the weak alike. It ensures that no one will ever be exploited or dismissed because they are different." She signed her name at the bottom of the document. Then she passed it to who signed as well. One by one, representatives from every member species added their signatures. It took hours, but no one complained. Everyone understood that they were witnessing history. When the last signature was complete, the hall erupted in celebration. Beings of every shape and size cheered and embraced. Old enemies shook hands. Old wounds began to close. For the first time in 10,000 years, the galaxy felt truly united. Later that evening, stood alone on a balcony overlooking the celebration below. The stars stretched out before her, countless points of light representing worlds that were now connected in peace and partnership. Walked up beside her. His retirement had not slowed him down. He still moved with purpose and strength. "You did well today," he said quietly. "We all did," replied. "This was never about one person, it was about all of us." They stood in comfortable silence for a moment, watching the festivities. "Do you think it will last?" asked. "This peace we have built?" Considered the question carefully. She thought about all the challenges that still lay ahead. Old prejudices would not disappear overnight. Some species would always resent humanity's rise to power. There would be conflicts, disagreements, and struggles in the years to come. "Nothing lasts forever," she said finally. "But that is not the point. The point is that we showed the galaxy what is possible. We proved that strength does not mean cruelty, that power does not require oppression, that different species can work together as equals." She turned to face her old friend. "Even if this partnership falls apart someday, the idea will survive. Future generations will remember that once, for a brief shining moment, the galaxy was united, and they will try to build it again." Nodded slowly. "When I stood in that hall 1 year ago, I was so afraid. I did not know if we were doing the right thing. I did not know if we would survive. But you did it anyway." "Someone had to," he smiled. "I just happened to be the one standing there." Laughed softly. "That is very humble of you." "I learned humility from watching the galaxy learn it. It is a good lesson." They watched the stars together in peaceful silence. Below them, the celebration continued, 1,000 species singing, dancing, and rejoicing as one. Somewhere in the crowd, Commander was teaching engineers how to improve their own technology. Counselor Bora was negotiating new trade agreements that would benefit everyone involved. Admiral was sharing stories with former enemies who had become friends. And across the galaxy, on 1,000 worlds, human teachers were educating alien students. Human doctors were healing alien patients. Human engineers were building a future where everyone could thrive. The cosmos had learned its lesson. Humanity was not weak. Humanity was not primitive. Humanity was the heart of a new order, an order built on respect, cooperation, and the simple belief that every being deserves to be treated with dignity. The stars shone bright that night, and for the first time in a long time, the future looked bright as well. Humanity had come home, and the galaxy was better for it.